Hello, good evening, and happy Thursday. Hello, everybody. Hello, happy Thursday, good evening. So, today is the day that we start our new book, right? We start our March series every Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Support, study, and self reflection, right? And our theme is autism parenting. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Imari Ventura. I'm the group moderator. I'm a speech language pathologist. I'm a mom. I'm a school administrator. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined the group, who has either if I've answered one of your questions in a special needs group, or if you found me somehow. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're watching and that you are part of this book study. So let's get started. So the full title is the Autism Mom's Survival Guide for Dads Too. The book is by Susan Senator, right? And this is a book of personal insight and interviews with families. Susan Senator is a mom of three. One of her children, his name is Nat, was diagnosed and is on the spectrum. He's now an adult. So she's compiled a lot of these narratives over the years. And so we have the pleasure of reading them all in this book. She also is the author of a couple of other books that really and advocate for and encourage the parents of children on the spectrum. I just want to be completely transparent and honest about myself. I'm not a special needs mom. I have two kids. I have a girl and a boy. My daughter is 7. My son will be 3 this month, so my kids are pretty young. They're both neurotypical. I suspect some mild fine motor delays. So my sensitivity, my testimony, my connection with the special needs parent community comes in as a professional. My years of work as a speech pathologist really put me in close proximity to families. I am a bilingual certified speech pathologist. I speak English and Spanish, and being bilingual certified has always put me on the ground level with the community, to see and hear different things, right, and to get perspectives. And so when I got married and became a mom, I took all of that and really honed in on. I just broadened it right outside of the bilingual Latin community into the special needs community, and really started to survey and research and grow a passion for the special needs parent experience. So I'm glad to get once again that we are reading Senator here. And so I want to start in chapter 1. Today we're going to be covering chapter 1 and chapter 2. I put some questions in the chat, so take a look at them when you can. I'm going to refer to them once in a while. But the first chapter is called It's All How You Look at It, the gift of perspective. Okay, and so I want to talk about this because it's our mindset, right, as parents shapes the whole experience that we have with our children. If we have the mindset that this is a gift, right, to be a parent. I wrote a social media post a couple of weeks ago. You might want to look back at it. But if we could really understand that the kids that we have, the kids that live in our house, right, that we care for, that they were specially selected for us, and that being the parent of a special needs child is a high calling. If we make that mindset shift, then the whole perspective changes. The way that we see and experience day to day with our kids would be very different. And so Senator really gets into her personal perspective when her child was diagnosed young, and as they continued on, and then she gets some perspective from other moms and dads, right? And so this was very powerful to me. I'm going to refer to the question. So question number one, and these questions are for you to download, to read and mull over, right? Process them and think about. You don't have to submit them or anything like that. They're really just for your edification personally as a parent. So question one, Senator expresses the feeling of inadequacy in Nat's early years after diagnosis when she describes, quote, I also had to physically let him go, to release him from my protective embrace and into the guidance of a school where he could learn from others who could help him better than I could. Okay, so my question is, during your journey, have you felt maxed out, overwhelmed, spread beyond your capacity to help your child with special needs? And so I think as parents, and I'll testify to this, you know, moms, when we are pregnant, we're carrying that baby, and the baby's part of us and with us. And then, and nobody can say or do anything about it. We make all the choices. We eat what we want to eat. We interact how we want to. When the baby comes out, it's now they are in the care of other people, right? Now you have a pediatrician. Now they're getting vaccines. Now they're doing different things. And so that's how I related to her quote, that she had felt like she had to let him go. I recognize how impersonal the clinical world and the educational world can be towards children, right? During this process. When she says she had to let him go, I get that, right? Because in the central office where I work, we don't necessarily call kids by their first and last name every time, right? We regard them as cases, and every case has a number, and there's compliance behind it all, and there's data behind it all. And so we don't get, especially now that we're post-COVID, so much is electronic. Most of the times we don't even get to see the kids at all. And so there's a lot of impersonal non-interaction that's going on. And so when I read this, I decided to make a question out of it because it was very provocative to me. You know, our kids, our babies who we care so much for, we have to release them into the hands of people who don't even know them, right? And who their caseload is so big, sometimes they don't even get to develop the personal connections that we know are so important. And so I recognize also, in that statement that she makes, she said a school where he could learn from others who could help him better than I could. And so that part makes me feel that she feels inadequate. And in my interactions with families with special needs children, you know, there's some guilt sometimes because some families may feel like they just don't know what to do. This is above and beyond what they're really able to handle, and they feel bad because as moms and dads, as caretakers, grandparents, whatever you may be, we feel like we should be able to answer every question and provide care at every stage, right? But some diagnoses and some severities of on the spectrum really require that we get skilled professional attention. And so that feeling of inadequacy, that is real. That is real. And she also recognized that in other parents. Now, lots of the content in this book was new for me. Like I said, I've been a speech pathologist now for 13 years. And I've seen it all. But seeing it in a therapy room and seeing it, the clinical perspective is very different from the living day to day. And so she interviews a mom named Kathleen. And Kathleen, I mean, just when I think of like just you do not see the end of the tunnel. Hopeless. Kathleen sounded hopeless to me. Her son went on with an 8-hour tantrum and banging his head, and that just sounds so torturous. Kathleen says, it just felt hopeless. I sat there looking at him, and there was nothing I could do or could say to help him calm down. I loved him, and yet I also hated him. And I felt horrible for hating him. And that to me was just candid in all meanings of the word. That was real. That was raw. And that was only on page 4. Because it can get so tough. It can get so tough. And in some instances, there's really nothing you could do to de-escalate a child, to help them self-regulate, and you just have to endure through the meltdown. Some meltdowns are mild, but some are profound. And so I really felt for this woman when she explained that. I mean, that I felt for a moment like I was in her shoes, in her skin, and like you could see no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just looks dark and miserable. And so that really touched me. Now, Senator, as we continue to get through the book, she really offers a lot of good insight on how parents can have a life of balance, how they can be an autism parent, and how they can be themselves, be a woman, be a man, be a wife, be a husband, be a friend, a sister, right? And so I really like this. She says autism is not she says autism was one context for our family, but not the entirety of it. Therefore, it was not a threat to our family's happiness, right? And so I think that that's important. That is part of perspective. Every vacation they went on, every trip they took, every restaurant they went to, any wedding that they went to, yes, of course. They had to make special provisions. They needed to consider the accommodations of Nat, right? But still, you can still be a football family, right? You could still be a family who loves sports. You could still be a family who loves cooking. You could still be a pizza family. You could still be you could still have other interests that the family is centered around, because even though one member of the family is on the spectrum. And so I thought that was good because it gives a lot of light and increased dimension and depth to the family. It's not just that that everything is about the child on the spectrum. It's that there's other interests and likes, right? And there's other enjoyment for the family to have. And so your perspective on the disorder makes the whole difference. It really, really does. She also says, and so I think in the special needs community, nomenclature is a big deal. I'm going to make a post about this. Decades ago, I know that a lot of us are not proud of it, but decades ago, mental retardation was a term used for a population, a portion of the special needs population. Intellectual disability is another term that was used for a portion of the special needs population. And so those words are no longer used because we are even more sensitive and intentional about the names and the words that we use to describe the special needs community, to describe diagnoses, and to talk about special needs, right? Even disability, right, is frowned on because, yes, you are able. So, Senator Susan, she says, I think that on some level, Kathleen and I, like many autism moms, started out viewing our son as broken or defective, and we saw ourselves as being at fault. So there's a couple of things in that sentence. She goes on really to make a separation between the parent and their parenting and the child's diagnosis, and reiterating for us that they're separate. They're two separate things. So as parents, we should not bundle our identity into the diagnosis. It gets hard because the diagnosis can be so consuming of ourselves, but they're two separate things. Now, as far as broken or defective, it's important to be mindful of the words that we use. And so I'll make a post about this. But I was taking my professional development today and listening to a course. And so the OT who was giving it, she spoke about neurodivergent versus neurodiverse, right? And that made me really, that related to this phrase for me, because neurodivergent implies that there is a baseline, that there is a form of neurotypical, and neurodivergent veers from that, right? And so that special needs are far away from what is neurotypical. Some can argue that that is true and that that's an appropriate term for the special needs community. Neurodiverse, though, is more of an inclusive term, and really implies that we all are a little bit different, right? We all are a little bit off of what is typical. And so I thought that was important to bring up. Now, she really does a really good job, the author, Senator, of bringing in her own personal perspective, excuse me, as well as the perspective of, and the testimony of her interviewees, as well as research, right? And so she says that there's a doctor who, a professor of human development in North Carolina, and she says that maternal grief is very high in the autism mom community. There are higher rates of depression. This is serious, and I want to be able to talk about that because it's really important, and it's really serious, and it's a reason why even as a clinician, before I had kids, I visited some of the autism support groups because I wanted to refer parents to go I wanted to see it before I referred parents to go to check it out. And so I'm bringing that up because in the midst of depression, it is so important to get into community. I decided to, and it wasn't me on my own, it was a group effort of other clinicians that I know, reading the Facebook comments, and asking different parents that have said outright, my child's on the spectrum and I need support. I need emotional support. And so I want to just encourage you to look for community in the way that you learn best, whether that be online or in person, because it is real. The professor at University of North Carolina goes on to say that it's an ambiguous loss. So the grief is twofold. There's grief about not having the child that the mother had hoped that they would have. And so that's real, you know, that is real, and that is a reason to seek treatment, and if not treatment, a support group. She also encourages mothers to take care of themselves rather than waiting for something to change in their children. And so I think that that's an important and very common theme as we go through chapter one. The sooner that we can accept our children for who they are, the sooner we come into acceptance of the diagnosis and we move forward, right? It's implied throughout chapter one that if we continue to try to change them, we could potentially become stuck. I want to talk about the Zoloft. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I am happy to answer at the end. And so I'm just looking down at the book a little bit and at the time. I want to talk about it. Now this is really good. Before I go back to the Zoloft, because that was really good. But she spoke to a couple of moms, speaking of perspective. And so one mom, after she got the diagnosis that her child was on the spectrum, she was okay because she believed that the diagnosis she got was mild, right? And as long as we think something is fixable, that it's treatable, you can cope with it. You can accept it and cope. And so that's one mindset that is important to, is important to realize. The severity, right, of the diagnosis most certainly makes a big impact in how the parents accept and cope with it. Then there was another family who she interviewed in Maryland. And so the mom's name was Carolyn, and Carolyn had a group of friends, and so another mom in her group of friends had recently gotten the diagnosis that her child had cancer. So then when Carolyn got the diagnosis that her child was on the autism spectrum disorder, right, on the spectrum, she was grateful. She was grateful because she realized it's all perspective. It's all relative. She realized in the grand scheme of things, her child was going to live. She wouldn't have to go through chemotherapy. She wouldn't have to battle the symptoms of medication. She wouldn't have to beg and plead for her child to live, right? So autism didn't sound so bad when she realized that it wasn't as bad as a diagnosis of cancer. And so perspective is so important. Our mindset, our psychology as parents is so important. It's so important. And it really sets the foundation for how we move forward, every decision we make, how we speak to our children, how we communicate with them, right? Where we set the bar for them. All depends on our mindset, our perspective, the goals that they have, the goals that are written on their IEP, the progress reports, how we interpret that, and then interact with them, all starts with our mindset. It's an inner work. It's an inner work. And so Senator really goes on to talk about the deep connections that she had with other moms. It was as I was reading this, I saw myself in different parts of it. Senator got the diagnosis for Nat when he was very little. And so she recounts a moment where a time where she went to the playground, which was her normal routine. And she had like other mom girlfriends who went to the playground also. And she blurted out, "The doctors thinks he has autism." And everybody stopped talking. And then Susan ran away because her perception was that that was embarrassing. She was embarrassed. She was embarrassed. So she ran away. Nobody did anything to her. Nobody said anything. Nobody taunted her. But she herself hadn't accepted that. And so she ran away. And she found another group of moms, right? And she was able to really have deep connections with them. So that was good. I really want to encourage you to get into community. This community here is growing. And so everybody knows themselves. But community is key, and it's important. She goes on to say that she talks about some of the doctors, the therapists, the pediatrician, some of the people she encountered throughout her journey. And she makes a point that the right professionals are really a game changer. And I've seen that before. I get phone calls from parents, and my division that I work in, that I take phone calls in the central office in, is for preschool. So my office services children who are 3 and 4 years old. Children will come at 4, and parents will say, I was very suspicious of this. I suspected that when he was 1, when he was 2. But our doctor said don't worry about it, or our doctor said this, or the teacher said that, right? And so much time has gone by and nothing was done. And so the right professionals are really a game changer, because there's so much information out there, but there's very little trusted information. And so we really have to vet the people we speak to, and really operate in another level of discernment to recognize if this is the right fit of a professional for me. So coping with judgment and criticism, this was really important, because I think that it brought to the surface a lot of emotions that parents with children on the spectrum. And when I say that, when I say parents, autism parents, this book is written by a mom who her son is on the spectrum, right? But a lot of this can apply to parents of children with special needs, whatever that might be. Doesn't have to be a spectrum disorder, can be something else. But a lot of these emotions, a lot of these feelings, a lot of these interactions, a lot of this testimony can apply to all moms and dads of children with special needs. And some of it, even, I'll go as far to say, can apply to parents of neurotypical children also. So she felt a lot of anger, right, when she learned about the diagnosis, just because it was heartbreaking. She discusses she had a lot of hostility, and she felt like everybody was judging her. And so when a person feels judged, when they feel criticized, they feel alone. They feel secluded. They feel isolated from the group, because they feel like nobody understands me. Right? They feel like nobody gets it. Nobody understands me. Nobody knows where I'm coming from or what I go through every day. And so that's an important point to recognize and to connect with. Because how many times have you felt excluded, right? Judge and criticize, and you just don't want to deal with that, because this over here with my child is enough to deal with. I can't take it. I can't cope with being judged and criticized. I can't take another remark. I can't take another comment. I can't take another face, because it's enough. Our morning was so tough. If you knew what it was to get him in the shower, let's be real. Let's be real. I would take my daughter to the pool, there was a little boy on the spectrum who just couldn't take water, and it was a battle. So the journey has rough moments, and so to deal with other people, sometimes you're up to here. You can't take it. And so this was an interesting point. She talks about feelings of anger and jealousy, right? Getting into some of these communities, Susan talks about, she did have connections with some moms. She did connect, and she did have some lasting friendships. But then she describes this feeling. And so I don't personally know this feeling, but I want to acknowledge it, right? Because some people may have felt this, and you might feel bad for feeling this, but know that it is a normal feeling. Susan talks about being in some of these support groups. She talks about developing friends, parents whose kids are on the spectrum, and she would meet the kids and say, "Oh, well, you're worse off than that." And then over time, those kids progressed, right? They progressed with their communication. They progressed with their fine motor, their sensory processing, right? They progressed with their PT goals, with eye contact, with socialization. And so she felt resentment because they had progressed and gotten further than her child, whereas she thought that they would be at a lower level. And so that's a real feeling. That's a real feeling. We all want our kids to thrive. We all want them to succeed. And so the fact that a child who looks like they're functioning lower is progressing faster than your child, that I don't agree, but I recognize that can be very hurtful. That could be very hurtful. And so towards the end of chapter 1, she talks about freeing yourself from the autism baggage, right? Freeing yourself from the guilt, the shame, the isolation, the exclusion, and that acceptance is key, okay? She gives 4 points. I'll read them really quickly. Though we face many struggles as autism parents, and though so much about our lives is not under our control, it is within our power to reduce a lot of the suffering we experience. We can do this by 1, remembering to take care of ourselves. What good is a mom or dad who is completely depleted, empty, an empty cup? What can you pour? Number 2, by figuring out how to have more fun with our kids, right? So I think when we put our kids in the context of fun, it really makes it enjoyable, helps us to accept them, right? As funny, as quirky, whatever, and really enjoy. Number 3, by nurturing our marriages, okay? And most important, by shifting our attitude about autism. And so then she goes ahead and she talks about freeing yourself from baggage. And so this was such a good way to start our series here every Thursday. And it's a good way to start this book because it is, like I said, an internal work. It is the inside. It is about mindset. It's about how you see your child, how you see the diagnosis, right? How you relate to it personally, and then how you see your child. Are you accepting them for who they are? Okay, so I want to move on to chapter 2. Right. Okay, great. Okay, so it's now what I wanted to talk about with Zoloft. Yes, okay, so that was in chapter 2. Great. Nice. Good. Okay, so chapter 2 is entitled Surviving the Great Autism Therapy Chase. We are in, if you're just joining, we are in the Autism Mom's Survival Guide by Susan Senator. Okay? We're on chapter 2. And so surviving the great autism Therapy Chase. Now, I'll say, when I first got this book, I did think that when they spoke about Therapy Chase, I thought that was my time, right? I thought it was going to be the chapter mostly about rehabilitative therapies. But it does talk about that a little bit. They talk about some of the related services that Nat received, but mostly this chapter is about pharmacological therapies, medical interventions, right? Different drugs, different things, and most importantly, she really breaks it down to the two schools of thought on ASD. So let me look at the questions. And once again, everybody, these questions are in the chat. I will put them in the files. These are for you to read, to process, and think about, and to sit in them. And so, okay. Early in chapter 2, Senator describes the division in the medical community around effective autism treatments and the urgency for parents to choose the right treatment. Quote, hearing this, we experienced for the first time, but not the last, that burning restlessness, relentlessness, need to get Nat the right treatment and not lose any time. During your journey, have you placed so much hope in any one treatment? What motivated your intentions? So I think it's a good question. Now, as a therapist, I will say, in the autism community, right? And when I say that, I'm including everybody: parents, teachers, doctors, therapists. There is so much division. Some people, from the very beginning, from the origin, what is the origin? What is the cause? There's a group over here and there's a group over here. And not only is it polarized, there's just it's heated. It's heated. I'm a speech pathologist. Speech, OT, and PT, we go together, we work together, we're together. When you talk about ABA in the autism community, I mean, it becomes like a vicious conversation. There's two schools of thought, and they are so contradictory. I wish a lot of that would settle down, because a lot of that adds fuel to parents' anxiety. And so I respect the choice of any family to go either way, whatever you decide. I would say that you have to move with discernment and in an informed manner, right? Right? So, and respect is key. The burning, relentless need to get Nat the right treatment and not lose any time is really a lot of pressure. And so she goes on to discuss some of the other decisions that she had to make. And when you make decisions in a context that's urgent and rushed, and you have to, it can be very, very difficult to move forward, right? And it can change your mindset and put you in a place that's kind of unhealthy. And so we see it, right? We see it in the decisions that Susan and her husband made for Nat. Some of it was very erratic. It's like he went from school to school to school. They went from professional to professional, just looking for the right answer. And that brings me back to the point that there's tons of information out there, from credible sources, non-credible sources. There is so much information for the autism community out there. But what we need is trusted information, trusted individuals. So that brings me to number 2. And this was really this when I read this part of the book where they started to give Nat Zoloff, I really resonated with this because as an administrator, parents come to me all the time telling me they want to switch schools, they don't like schools for X reason. And so this is my question. After discovering that Zoloff assisted in improving Nat's social difficulties, his parents placed him in an academically demanding and rigorous program, right? So Zoloff had helped him to socialize more, and it worked for a little bit. And so they said, oh wow, well, we've got this under control. Now let's do the next thing and get him into a program that's more demanding, and so we'll do it. We'll push. Soon after, he became destabilized and horribly aggressive and was expelled. Senator describes regret for being a pushy parent and wanting more. Okay, so this I can just visualize. They gave him Zoloff. Now the thing about giving children medication is that it's always there's always some trial and error, and there's, from what I've seen in my experience and in my experience in the school setting, it's always a trial and error. The doctor is always trying to get the dosage right, and then they step back and observe, and then we wait and we see what's going on. So Zoloff was working for a period of time, and they just kept increasing his demands. And so he became destabilized, aggressive, and he was expelled. And then she goes on in the book to say that he then went home. He stayed home for a couple of months until he could get a new placement in an appropriate school setting. So they kind of went 2 steps forward, then to go 3 steps backward. And that's incredibly frustrating for the parents and for the child, right? I am not a proponent of moving kids around like that. And so she was pushy. Her and her husband, they were pushy. They wanted more. My question is, can you relate to her instances of chasing the dream of a, quote, mainstreamed kid and trying to control the trajectory of treatment? Can you relate to chasing the dream of a mainstream kid and trying to control the trajectory of treatment? And so I think it's an important question because a lot of this had become an idol for them. A lot of this had become, Nat and his diagnosis had become an idol for a period of time for the parents, and they had an idea of what they wanted him to be. And parents oftentimes use exactly those words. I want him to do this. I want him to be. And so that can be very difficult because as parents, we may set such a high expectation, and when our child doesn't reach it, we get disappointed, right? And that's what disappointment is. It's the evidence of unmet expectations. And so those unmet expectations may change our mindset, which may then disrupt our interactions with our child. And so she had interviewed another mom who said something similar to that. And she said she thought her child hated her because she was so pushy and just wanted more and just, dragged him around from therapy to therapy to therapy. And so it's a balance. It's a balance of wanting the best for our kids, for keeping them on track, right? Because a lot of what I see, and what a lot of what I facilitate as a special education administrator is the evaluation process, right? Eligibility, identification, classification, all of that. But then getting them on the right track, right? Getting a program into place, getting a program and getting the right therapies and getting everything, getting summer session, getting makeup, getting compensatory and doing all the things. So it's important, but it's enough. In some instances, it's enough. Getting them on track in combination with the rigid expectations and the pushiness, it's not helping. And that's what I've gathered from Susan Senator. It's just when we try to control so much, it doesn't help us and it doesn't help our child either. When we bring a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure to the situation, it can really do some damage. It can really do some damage. So I'm gonna stop here. I think that we really, it was a great Facebook Live. I've really enjoyed chapter 1 and chapter 2. Next week we'll talk about chapters 3 and chapters 4. So please, everybody, go into the chat, go into the files, take a look at some of the questions, read them, process and think them over. And if you have any questions, you can email me. If you have a revelation, please do put it in the feed. We're all happy to learn from one another. And I'm very excited to continue with our book. One announcement, I put the March at a Glance up in the group. There are different things going on. I know lots of times as parents, and even as professionals, I know we have some professionals in the group. We like to have everything scheduled, and we like the idea of a calendar, and we have so much going on. So please take a look at the at a glance and try to make it. Once again, my name is Imari, and I'm so glad to be here. And I will continue to see you for the next 3 Thursdays in March. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a very good evening, a very nice weekend, and I'll see you next time. Take care and bye-bye.